So every time she would move me, it just so happens when I would look up, I'd see the crucifixion. And I'm like, okay, if he bared it, I can bear it. If he bared it, I can bear it. And I honestly think that was the beginning of an encounter with God that I never thought would happen.
Hey y'all, I'm your host, Brooke Kinchin. Welcome to God's Coffee Call, a place where there's always a fresh brewed conversation happening of personal testimony and life experiences. So grab a cup of coffee, pull a chair to the table, and join our conversation. Hey everybody, welcome back to God's Coffee Call. Again, I am your host, Brooke Kinchin. And today we have a very special guest here with us. Miss Jessica is here with me.
Yes.
We have gotten to know each other in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And her story is one that has intrigued me. I don't know all of her story,
Right.
but the bits and pieces that I've gotten to know and gotten to find out have been amazing. And so when I thought about going into this next episode of God's Coffee Call, I'm like, gotta have me some Jessica come share with us.
Absolutely.
And so before we start, I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you for joining us on God's Coffee Call so far. Please subscribe to our channel, like this video, comment, share it, all those good things. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much for being here with us week after week. Hopefully you're not bored with us by now doing what we're doing, but we know that God is doing amazing things, and we've seen some amazing testimonies come out of our times at God's Coffee Call. But for today, let's get to talking to Miss Jessica.
Yes, ma'am.
I got to know you a couple years ago when I decided to do a career change of my own.
Right.
And I went from working in an office building to running after 3-year-olds at a daycare.
And bless you for that.
Bless Jesus, because something I never thought I would do, something I never wanted to do, but something at that time in my life that absolutely was a God moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I met some of the most amazing little guys and girls that are my kids to this day. Like, I love them.
Yep.
And your son, Jordan, is one of those. And he's my JoJo.
That's
like,
right.
He's just full of fun and adventure. And then we just kind of got connected through some other friends and our friend Chelsea that we both dearly love.
Absolutely.
And God has just grown a friendship out of the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like
the three amigos.
Yeah. Two girls I had never met in my life. One I met in a Starbucks randomly. Another one kid I'm teaching. And the Lord has just brought us together.
Absolutely.
And done amazing things.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your childhood.
So I grew up in Springfield, born and raised, never left. My parents did divorce when I was 3, so I don't really remember a lot of that. I was, very young, and but growing up, I was, during the holiday season, of course, was always stressful because I had mom to go to, dad to go to, everybody in between. And so it was never, I don't really remember having just that one family to go to. But the Lord blessed me with multiple families, and seeing how big a family can grow even in the midst of something as a divorce. But
Gotcha.
I have nothing but love on both sides. Like, both families are great. And couldn't ask for
Truly
more.
bonus families, as
Absolutely,
we call them.
100%. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just divorced parents is all we've known.
Right.
How do we get to where we are now? What's kind of life?
So, growing up, I was always an athlete. I started playing basketball at the age of probably 6 or 7. Went through school, middle school, high school, playing ball. It's just kind of something that's been instilled in me, I guess, sports-wise.
Mm-hmm.
Graduated. I went to Springfield, graduated from St. Thomas, though. So my freshman year of high school, moved over to St. Thomas Aquinas here in Hammond.
Okay.
Graduated from there, playing sports. Went to Southeastern.
Okay.
Went as an education major, believe it or not. And then the first, I guess, maybe second or third year, it was like, okay, I'm getting ready to be a 5-year senior, and I had to push some things back. And they weren't offering classes that I needed, so it was like, okay, I don't want to be in college another year. So I switched over to general studies. go ahead and graduate, and then if something else comes up later, I'll go back.
Okay.
So from there, I graduated with general studies, was working as a project manager at Gainey's Concrete Products. I was engaged at the time, and I got engaged in college, and we were engaged for, I guess it was probably about 3 years, because we didn't get married because I had Pell Grants with college, and, didn't want to get rid of that, because if I got married, I wasn't going to get that money.
Right.
And at that time, I wasn't making a tremendous amount to where I could pay for college. But, I look back and I thank the good Lord for that, because I wouldn't be where I am today.
Right.
There was a reason we didn't get married.
Yeah.
We did get engaged, and, it was a mutual thing, kind of called things off. And after that, it was, I guess where I'm at now. And
So we're in college.
yes.
We've decided that we're going to switch general studies. We're
Right.
working. We're engaged. We're calling this off.
Yeah.
In the middle of this, did you ever go to church? Was Jesus ever part of this life
Well,
that you lived?
Not okay. At that point in time, I will say no. When I was younger, grew up in church, was in church every Sunday, every Wednesday, vacation Bible school, and that was probably elementary up until middle school age. And probably in middle school is when kind of, I don't want to say pulled back from being a Christian, but pulled back from church.
Gotcha.
But not really completely walking the walk as a Christian,
Gotcha.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would say at that point, no. Whenever I was going to school, working, and engaged at that point in time, it was not something that I relied heavily on God for.
Right.
Because I was just kind of like living life. Like, it is what it is, Did I believe in God? Yes. But it wasn't like I was
There was no relationship kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We got some little foundation stories that we heard
Yeah.
like in Sunday school and stuff. But
Right. It was, but I never was leaning in him for everything.
Got you.
So
we're engaged and we break that off.
Right.
Where do we go from there? What happens?
From there, I'm still working at Gainey's. And actually at the time, my current husband was working there, and, it was just something that was another God thing that, whenever I called it off with my ex-fiance, we just it was something that hit off, and I would have never thought that God would have brought us together,
Yeah.
But it was one of those things. It's just when it happens, it happens. And
Yeah.
sometimes you can't question it,
Mhm.
because you never know.
Right.
But our families have known each other. Mine and my husband's families have
Okay.
known each other for a very long time.
Okay.
So it was never something that
Random stranger kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But just because I know him, I would have never thought I was going to marry him.
Right.
But when God placed him in my life as a significant other, it was like, okay, I
I see you, Jesus.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, at the time, I really didn't understand it.
Yeah.
It was, because, there is an age difference.
Okay.
So me and Chris are 10 years
Okay.
apart,
Okay.
which is, at that point in time when I was 25,
Right.
dating somebody that's 35, not that that's a really big age
right.
difference, but
there's things there.
there's gaps
sometimes,
there. Yeah. So it's like, okay, why would somebody at 35 want to be with a 25-year-old?
Right. Yeah.
And that's really, I think, at that point in time where I started questioning myself, like my self-worth.
Okay.
Like, okay, is this really something that's supposed to happen?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're dating and
Yes.
we decided to get married. How's
Yeah. We dated for about 3 years,
Okay.
and then he proposed. That was something too that I was kind of like, okay, we've been dating for 3 years, living together. Okay, is this going to happen? Or because at that point I was kind of like, okay, are we just going to be boyfriend and girlfriend forever? Because at that point in time, I felt like I was really ready to start settling down.
Right.
The day that he proposed was one of my great grandma's 80th birthday.
Okay.
And so it was something that we were getting ready to see everybody again that day. And then my grandfather, my mom's dad, was getting married that night because my grandma had passed away.
Mhm.
So it was kind of like, I was like, okay, here we are, another day, getting ready to face a whole bunch of family members. We're 3 years into this. He still hasn't proposed. Like, okay, is this really, are we in it to be in it? Or am I just kind of, is this another stepping stone?
Right.
So when he proposed, it was definitely something that I wasn't expecting, but it all worked out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're married. Marriage is good. Married life's good.
Married life is great. Married life is great. Going into married life, I knew that there was a possibility we couldn't have children.
Okay.
And this is where, truly reflecting back, God had his hand in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I thank God every day for this. But so Chris had a vasectomy whenever his oldest child, because he has 3 older kids.
Okay.
So I have 3 stepkids, and they're
Okay.
older, of course, because Chris is older. But he had his vasectomy whenever his youngest was born.
Okay.
So when we got married, it had been about 15 years since he'd had that.
Okay.
And it was like, okay, are we going to try to have kids? What are our options here?
Mhm.
And I was okay with not having kids because I truly...
That's what I was going to ask. Like going into this, you know this, right?
Yeah, I knew
And so-
this. Yeah. And my mom, when I was younger, had foster care. So I kind of had my hand in the adoption, foster care. Like there was that option
You
there.
knew that there was
And I
options.
was okay with that.
Okay.
Um,
Which is big because there are some ladies who are like, no, I can't have my own baby. I'm not going to do this.
right.
Even though they appreciate and they support adoption, but that's a very big thing to
It
say.
is.
I mean, like when my brother and sister-in-law got married, he married a girl that had 2 boys already.
Mhm.
She necessarily, not that she didn't want any more, but they were just in that stage of life where another one does it fit for our
Right.
life, kind of where we at.
Exactly.
And so him coming to the point of, I'll maybe never have a blood son of mine or a blood daughter of mine. That's a big thing for somebody to accept.
Absolutely. Well, and then also on Chris's end too, like saying, hey, I am older, but I do want to try to explore
Right.
this avenue with you, you
Right.
know, because at that, that was something we discussed
Yeah.
because of his age.
Yeah.
So about a year in of us being married, we started exploring options, which of course reversals here in Louisiana are super expensive. Like
Right.
you're talking like $30,000, and it's like, okay, we don't really have that money, but the good Lord opened some other doors. We went out of state and had a reversal done where it was
Okay.
a quarter of the price.
Okay.
And we had some resources where people had already been there before. People had already been there before, so we knew we weren't going into something like a dark alley or something,
Right.
you know? So we did that, came back from that trip, and within a year, we had Jordan.
Wow. So absolute miracle, like
Absolutely.
through science, through whatever, but also through the Lord. Just,
Absolutely. So that was a 16 years after having a
Come on.
vasectomy that he was able to still conceive a child, or
Okay.
I was able to conceive a child. Yeah,
right.
absolutely. So that was the first, probably, I don't want to say encounter with God that I was like, okay, I need to start leaning in more.
Mhm.
At that point in time, I truly knew, like, we had been praying for a child. It was an answered prayer. Still kind of at that point on the edge of, okay, what is this God really about? You know
Gotcha.
what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Or, you know, how much can I really rely on him?
Mhm. Did Chris grow up in church or anything? Have any kind of
Yes.
foundation with Jesus?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
yes, yeah. Same kind of thing. You know, he went to church.
Because we're in the
Sunday-
South, people just go to church when we
Right,
live. That's what we
exactly.
do,
Sunday
right?
mornings, Wednesday, you know, youth group, you know, went to church camp during the summer, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Right.
So, you know, at that point I was like, okay, you know, mom life, we got this, you know, let's roll with it, you know. And that was one of the blessings, I think, at first, where I truly was like, okay, I need to get back into the whole church thing. And I will say probably Jordan was around a year or two, and I'm like, okay, this is family. We need to get back to the root of who we are,
Mhm.
and we need to get back to church. So that was kind of when we started visiting churches and stuff like that. And, you know, Chris's work schedule is a little bit different than mine because being a school teacher, you know, it's a little bit different. And I guess I kind of jumped forward
That's
a little
okay.
bit. That's okay. So currently at this point, yeah, I'm a school teacher or a paraprofessional at the school, so teacher's aide at Springfield Middle School and basketball coach at this point whenever I had Jordan. So that was, very big change in pay, a change in schedules for all of us, because Chris does road construction. So he's working nights, so he's working weekends and all that. So that's whenever I think for me personally, it was like, okay, I can't do this on my own. And that's whenever I started
really just kind of
seeking the Lord.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So we're found a church. We're looking for a church.
Still looking for a church.
Okay.
Yeah. The church that I grew up in as a child had kind of split.
Okay.
And so it really was kind of like we can try it. We'll try his church, Chris's church, and so then it was like we kind of started going down some avenues of trying other churches and stuff like that too, but never really stuck with anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like as we would go once, maybe skip a couple weeks, go again.
Right.
But at that point, I feel like it was just something we were just checking off the box, checking off the list, putting a check mark and going with it. It wasn't something that was truly, it was just a routine, I guess.
Right.
More so. Yeah.
Okay. And when does it change? What happens? What's going on?
So fast forward to last year. So March of 2024. Jordan is 4 at the time. And just really, I reached out to one of my friends and I was like, hey, I'm struggling. I don't know what's going on. And she's one of my friends, Christian, goes to church, really, I trust her, that type of thing. But I'm like, I just don't know what's going on. And the words I used with her was, I feel like my cup's empty and I can't pour anymore. Like I've been pouring and pouring and pouring. I have nothing left to give. And she's like, well, what's been going on? So I just kind of explained to her, I'm at work, I'm exhausted. I'm at home, I'm exhausted. I'm a mom, I'm exhausted. I'm a wife, I'm exhausted. I just can't do it.
Come on. Everybody comment.
Yes.
That's me, right? We've been there.
Yeah. It's just like I'm going in every different direction. And I'm like, I'm not giving any time to myself. And I'm like, I really think I'm going to go to the doctor, see about getting on some anxiety medicine, some ADHD medicine. I don't know. I can't focus. I can't do anything.
Right.
And she told me, she was like, do you really think medicine is the answer? And I'm like, well, what else would be the answer? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And so we talked a little bit longer, and then she's like, I'm going to give you this book, and I really think it'll benefit you to read. And I'm like, okay, like I'm not a big reader. I just don't like to read. I don't like English. I don't like writing. I don't like speaking.
I'm a PE coach.
Yeah, I'm a PE coach and a basketball coach. Like I just, So the book was called Having a Mary Heart in a Martha World. And I'm like, okay, well, I didn't anticipate it being a Christian book. I didn't really know what to expect.
Right.
But I wasn't sleeping at night. I wasn't. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to just pick up this book.
Might as well read. I'm awake.
Yeah. Started reading it. Couldn't put it down. Like it was just like I was hungry for more. And it almost consumed me.
Wow.
For like the first 2 weeks of me reading it.
Okay.
And I got like halfway through the book. But one morning, I don't even remember what day it was, but one morning at about 2:00 in the morning, I woke up and I'm like, I need to go get this book. Well, it happened to be sitting in my living room and it was turned over. I had no idea it was a 12-week Bible study.
Oh, wow.
So I looked at it and I was like, wait, Bible study? I'm like, okay, that's my answer. I need to get back in the Bible.
Right.
And there was questions and stuff in the Bible, but I didn't really realize like in the back, there's question and answers to get deeper into it. So I'm like, okay, I need to go back to the beginning.
Wow.
Went back to the beginning of the book, started going through it and went through the Bible study. And that's when things really started to change for me. And in the midst of me doing that, I did still go to the doctor. I went to my regular primary care doctor. I did go on anxiety medicine, but it made things worse.
Yeah.
So I took myself off the anxiety medicine without even going to the doctor. And I went through a little bit of a hard time where like I felt like my skin was just crawling, but I was in the midst of reading that book as well.
Right.
So at that point, the Lord was just showing me, lean into me and I can get you through this.
So tell me, because I don't want to pass over that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit this book. Like what
Mhm.
what was the dynamics of this book? What was the
So I haven't finished the whole book
okay?
because there are different avenues that happen and I haven't finished it. But the beginning of the book is basically it's telling the story of Mary and Martha when Jesus came in, and Mary is just sitting at Jesus's feet, taking everything in, and Martha's like, Lord, she needs to be helping me, and preparing the house and preparing the food, and Jesus tells her, she's doing what's good.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, it hit me because I'm like, okay, I just need to sit at the feet of Jesus and just listen to him, be still, and be patient.
Right.
Quit trying to do it on my own. Because I think at that point I had hit my rock bottom because I was carrying everybody else's burdens with me and trying to fix everything for everybody else. But I'm not the fixer. It's him.
Right. Yeah.
He can do everything.
Right.
Now we can do everything through when he strengthens us,
Yeah.
but
It's ultimately him.
right. But you got to have faith and you got to give it to him to let him work,
Absolutely.
So just stepping back and going through the book and realizing it writes down like what's causing you to keep God from blessing you, or what's worrying you today, or what concerns do you have. So just really sitting back and reflecting on a day-to-day what I can give to God,
Right.
and that's everything.
Yeah.
But if you're just sitting here spinning, sometimes you don't think that way.
Because it's real easy to be Martha's. It's really easy to stay busy and do this and do that and do that
Right.
and stay spinning and stuff.
Absolutely.
And sometimes in the middle of this craziness with the chaos all around, we need to sit and just be at the feet of Jesus.
Right. Absolutely.
Just let it spin around you for a hot minute and just
Yeah.
sit at the feet of Jesus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's when he wants to work the most, because we're not supposed to carry it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that's truly where it was like, okay, here I am. I'm picking up this burden to carry and this burden to carry as a wife, as a mom, as a coach, as a worker. You know what I'm saying? But I wasn't asking God to help me. I was trying to do it myself. And that's when I couldn't pour anymore because I didn't have anything else to give. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
how did that begin to transform your life?
So about that time, that's whenever I truly was like, okay, Chris, Jordan's getting old enough. Like we've got to truly like, let's find a church home, and with his work schedule, it's hard for him to say, okay, I'm gonna, cause he never knows if he's working nights or days, but he's like, let's go try a couple more churches and we'll do that. Well, we went to Calvary a couple times, really enjoyed it. And then it was like, okay, we went to another church here and there, and it was just, I don't know, something hit that first time we went to Calvary. The first time we went to Calvary, Todd did something different with worship. It was like anybody dealing with anxiety or depression during the midst of praise and worship in the morning, like, come up, let's pray over you.
Right.
And it was like, okay, like here I am. This is my first day in this church, and
He's calling me out.
Like, what's the
Right.
what is this?
Right.
Okay, God. Okay, let me. And of course, I'm one that's typically back pew. Like, I don't want to be up in the front, but I can't not go.
First day at the church, I'm up front.
Right. And I felt a lot of release after that. Like, I will say, like, going that day, I'm like, okay, this is felt right. This is where I need to be. This is going to start refilling my cup.
Right.
And that's whenever I started to, God started refilling my cup and started bringing life back to me at that point. And that was towards the end of the school year. And things, went to a couple of church services, and then it was like, okay, I need to bring back FCA to our school, because at that point our school didn't have that.
Right.
So asked our principal about it. Sure, let's go. So like the last 5 weeks of school, we had praise and worship, and in the midst of that, we had 2 kids get saved.
That's awesome.
At praise and worship, and that was another thing. Like, okay, God, like, here you are. You gave me this opportunity, and kids are getting saved at school. Like,
yeah.
okay, all right. That's another, like, But I think so at that point in time, I'm like, okay, over the summer, let me get things situated. We're going to get FCA up and going, ready to go for the beginning of next year.
Mm-hmm.
So started working on that. And, but then it was Mother's Day weekend. I actually ended up going to church by myself, which was fine, because Chris was at home with Jordan. Jordan wasn't feeling well. So he's like, I'll stay home with him. You go. Mm-hmm. And I'd only been to church a couple of times, and I didn't really know Pastor Brad. I knew his wife because we cousins. We've been to church together, right. Kind of grew up together. And in the middle of praise and worship, he calls me out in front of everybody at church and gives me a word. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? Like, okay, do I need to just like stop coming to church? Because like
every time I come, these people call me out.
Right. But after he gave me that word and I sat back on that was really the time, like, okay, I'm coming back. Like, I'm building that relationship with God again, and he's calling me back to him. And that's when I really just started feeling that peace over my life again.
Okay, so let me ask you, in the middle of this, I shared a word with you at church.
Right, you did.
That I didn't know what I was doing, but I want you to share about that because I think it totally goes, even though I didn't know at the time what you were going through, because like I said, I knew you as Jordan's mom from the daycare. We had not really had, we've had a few little text messages, but that was it.
Nothing.
Like, it was very surface level.
Right. Like, never like texting back and forth on a regular basis.
I had no idea what you were doing, what you were going through.
So you actually gave me the word before. No, it was after Mother's Day.
Okay.
Yeah. Or maybe it was before.
I don't remember.
I can't remember. But it was amidst that time. And you had told me that whenever I was up praise and worship and I was at the front at the altar, that you saw like a funnel, just my mouth wide open with a funnel. And at that point in time, I felt like God was just feeding me. And like, I couldn't keep up. Like, all these things were happening. FCA was happening at the school. Like, I was staying hungry for the word and opening my Bible. I was getting words from the book that I was reading, and it was just flowing. And I almost felt like I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
Like, I was like right here to water. And I'm like, okay. And then when you told me that, I'm like, okay, yes, this is exactly how I feel,
Yeah. Like that morning when I saw you go up, I don't even know what was preached that morning.
Right.
But I saw you up there with our youth pastor. He was praying over you, Coach O, and he was praying over you. And I just really came behind you to support you because it was a man and a woman. I was like, I'm just going to go and like, I'm probably one of the only people she knows at this church, just to let her know that everything's okay kind of thing. And while I was there, like, as soon as I put my hand on your back, I literally saw you like with your head back, mouth open in this funnel. And the Lord's just like, I just saw him just pouring this water in. It's going all over you. And I'm like, I feel like I need to share this, but this is going to sound crazy because, you never know when the Lord tells you something and says, share it with somebody. Like, God, I'm going to sound crazy. And these people, like, people already think that I'm a little off kilter anyhow. And so you'd think I'd be used to it by now. But I was like, okay, Lord, I'm just going to share this word with her and let it make sense if it makes sense, and just don't let her think about it if it's not you, kind of thing.
And it was right on
and
point.
Instantly, like, you just were like tears. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, we're somewhere here, God. So, but it's really cool to hear that, because I didn't know that. It's really cool to hear you say, I was really empty, and I just told my friend that my cup was totally empty.
Yeah.
And for me to see that the Lord's and he began to do that. Like, that's
100%. Yeah.
Coming from the outside, watching you from that moment now, like, just to see what the Lord's done in your life. And it's insane. Like, we'll talk about last night in just a few minutes, but there's a picture of you running on the court, and there's this like I teared up this morning looking at it. There's like this joy on your face. And I'm like, that's not the girl I met 6 months ago. Like, that is not the woman that I encountered 6 months ago. There's this joy that literally just bubbles out of you. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. I wasn't expecting that moment. Okay. So tell us, the Lord's doing things in your life.
Yeah. So from that point, we're just going to fast forward a couple, because I really feel like this is where the Lord has led me to share completely. Because no matter where you're at with the Lord, he can bring you up, and he can bring you out of anything and everything. So, July 5th of this year, I went to a wedding with my son. It was on a Friday afternoon, so Chris was working. He couldn't come. So we went to the wedding. Me and Jordan were dancing because he's my little jitterbug.
I love him.
He loves to dance. So we're dancing. Well, he didn't know the line dance and he was getting frustrated. So I picked him up and put him on my hip and we were doing the line dance together. Well, little did I know that night changed my life forever just because I picked him up and danced with him. So got in my car to leave and I noticed that my leg was like hurting a little bit. By the time I got home, I could not put any weight on my right leg. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what's going on. Is it something female related? Did I break my back? Like, I don't like what's going on. So got home, got in bed, and Chris was like, well, what? I'm like, I just don't know, but like, it's hurting super bad. I can't put any weight on it. Stayed in bed all day on Saturday. So that would have been the 7th. And wind up at Women's Hospital Sunday because I really thought it was something female related just because we have a history of that in our family.
Right.
We went to Women's Hospital. Everything checked out fine there. They checked for blood clots, kidney stones, you name it. But they did do a CT scan and they thought maybe they saw some slip disc in my lower back. So they referred me to a orthopedic doctor. So called on Monday to schedule that. Couldn't get in till Friday. I'm like, oh God, like I don't know if I can handle this. So every day I was calling to try to get in to see if there was any cancellations. Wednesday came around and there was an opening Thursday morning. And by that time, as a 36-year-old, I was sitting in the recliner in the living room, not being able to move, couldn't walk, was using a walker and crutches to move. Like literally was incapable of doing anything.
Wow.
My mom had taken off work.
Thankfully, it was the summer, so we didn't have to go to school.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, being a teacher, I didn't have to worry about work. My mom did take off work and she came and stayed with me a couple days to help out. But it got so bad. Like I was even to the point where one of my friends had her grandma bring a bedside toilet to sit right next to the recliner. So I would just have to get up, sit down to use the bathroom and then get back in the recliner.
In a matter of a week.
Wow. Yeah. It was crazy. And I just like, you know, and I'm not one that takes a lot of medication and I have a high pain tolerance, but the only thing that would give me relief at that point was pain medicine. And I'm like, I can't live off this. Like, that's not the life.
A 5-year-old,
right.
6-year-old.
Yeah. We're not doing this. So finally I got to the orthopedic doctor on Thursday morning at that. And I'm going to get really vulnerable here and just be flat out. Yeah. Like, when we went to the doctor, I even told my mom that morning, I said, hey, just for my sanity, I need you to go to the dollar store and get some Depends because if we get to this doctor's office and I have to go to the bathroom, I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it.
Right.
Like, so as a 36-year-old,
right,
sitting in Depends, going to a doctor was just so humbling and just like, okay, God, like, I need your help in this. Like,
when a week ago I was on the dance floor dancing with my kid.
Right. I mean, and I'm active. I'm a basketball coach. You know, I run 5Ks. Like there was nothing. Right. I mean, I went from 90 to nothing to still
nothing.
To nothing. Literally 90 to nothing. Went to the doctor. He immediately told us, I'm sending you to the emergency room. This is not a slip disc. This is something different. Like, but don't take any pain medicine. Don't take anything because I'm kind of concerned they might need to do emergency surgery when you get to the emergency room. And I'm like, what? Well, okay.
I come in here for a scan, bro.
Right. So we ended up going to Our Lady of the Lake in Baton Rouge. Sat in the waiting area for probably, I'm gonna tell you what seemed 5 or 6 hours. I think it was only an hour. But the amount of pain I was in, it was something I've never experienced in my entire life. Got to a point where, so we're at Our Lady of the Lake. You know, they have the crucifixion kind of hanging up here and there. And it was like I tell my mom, like every so often I had to get her to shift me around in the wheelchair to different locations because I couldn't stare at just one thing and I couldn't get up and walk.
Right.
So every time she would move me, it just so happens when I would look up, I'd see the crucifixion. And I'm like, okay, if he bared it, I can bear it. If he bared it, I can bear it. And I honestly think that was the beginning of an encounter with God that I never thought would happen. But I truly believe that's the only reason I got through what I got through, like how it started. When they finally got me back to the emergency room and got me admitted, they gave me every pain medicine under the sun that they had. Within probably 2 hours, nothing touched the pain.
Wow.
Nothing. They did a CT scan. They did an MRI. Didn't see anything. I take that back. They did an MRI, but it was without the contrast. So they still didn't see anything. Well, right before they were getting ready to just let me go home because they couldn't find anything and they couldn't control the pain, my fever spiked. And they were like, okay, there's an infection somewhere. As soon as that happened, and here's where I'm going to probably get emotional and I apologize. As soon as that happened, they gave me vancomycin, which is, if anybody in the medical field, like that's the old-timey medicine that they've used forever when it comes to infections. As soon as they gave that to me, within 30 minutes, I got some relief. Now, it wasn't complete relief, but it wasn't pain medicine. That was an antibiotic that they gave me. So we knew at that point in time it was something serious. Yeah. So they immediately started doing blood cultures. Well, typically blood cultures, you have to wait 24 hours for them to come back. Well, within 12 hours, mine showed up to be MRSA.
Wow.
Yeah. So it got in my bloodstream.
How do you even how does that even happen? Like, wow.
Yeah. It's, yeah. And everybody's a carrier of MRSA, kind of like staph, you know, but when it hits your bloodstream, that's a whole nother different ballgame. And when I found that out, I'm like, how am I even here? Because evidently I've had it this whole time, you know, but I wasn't treating it. So it was just growing in my body. Like, how did it not take over my body? So of course, once they admitted me into the hospital, as soon as they knew that I had an infection and I got a fever, they immediately admitted me. And when they found out it was MRSA, started doing all these tests and stuff, but it still didn't explain the hip situation, which was causing me not to be able to put weight on my leg. Yeah. So that next morning, because by this time it was probably 12 o'clock at night when all this happened and they admitted me. So the next day started doing, they did an MRI with contrast so they could see like exactly what was going on with the muscles and stuff like that. Well, come to find out, I had 2 pockets of staph in the hip. And what happened was I had MRSA in my bloodstream. When I was dancing with Jordan, I tore my psoas muscle. And so the tear, when the blood was released from that tear, it attracted the MRSA from my bloodstream and caused the 2 pockets of staph in my hip. Which is right next to the sciatic nerve, inside the hip. Yeah. So that's
which runs down the leg.
Which goes down the leg, yes. Wow. So amidst all of that, they, of course, antibiotics around the clock, pain medicine around the clock, just trying to make me comfortable. But it was probably, and there was a same thing with the pain medicine. I was able to get up a little bit more, but same thing, had the bedside toilet right next to the bed in the hospital, getting up, using it, getting back on the bed. So it was at least, I think, 3 or 4 days before I truly got up and walked in the hospital. So
yeah, I remember you texting me and Chelsea and you're like, hey, I'm going to the doctor, not feeling right.
Yeah.
And they didn't hear from you for like 12 hours. And you're like, hey, what's going on? And Chelsea finally texted me back. She's like, girl's got MRSA. And I'm like, what? How? Okay, we were just going because we couldn't walk. Like, what's going on? And like every text was like worse and worse and worse. Right. And Chelsea and I are like, what is happening right now? Yeah. What is going on, Lord? And so, of course, we began to pray and but like we would go for hours not hearing from you. And I think there was one time a day we didn't hear. And I'm like, Chelsea, and she's like, I finally had to call and talk to somebody because we didn't know what was going on. So that's insane.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll stop for a moment and
Okay.
explain to everybody
Yes.
what MRSA actually is in
Okay.
the system and why that's a bad thing.
Yes.
I'll let you do that.
Okay. So MRSA is basically it's so staph, when people get staph, typically it's an outside boil that happens and it pusses up, but it's outside. So MRSA is a staph that lives within the body in the bloodstream, and it can cause major damage really quickly if it's not. And I'm not going to try to even pronounce the true medical term for it, but it's basically staph within the bloodstream.
And then that on top of
Another true
infectious staph, true staph together was just like an atomic bomb waiting to take over your. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, like I said, it's not something that's uncommon. Like people can have MRSA, and that's one of the things the doctor did say. He said you could have easily fought off the MRSA in your bloodstream, that infection, if you didn't have this tear. Like I might have never known that I had MRSA in my bloodstream had I not had this tear in my psoas muscle. Because people can be carriers and people can have it and it can cause an infection in the bloodstream, but sometimes you don't even know it. Your body just fights it off. Right. But like I said, the only reason we knew about it is because of the tear in my psoas muscle.
All right. So we find this out. So what's the next step? What do we do now?
Oh, okay. So, day probably 3 or 5 in the hospital, I am starting to get up, do physical therapy. They're taking blood cultures every day and watching my numbers. And it was probably about the 3rd or 5th day. They were like, well, your numbers aren't doing what they want us to. Like the staph numbers, the infection numbers were not coming down like they were supposed to. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, come to find out, my kidneys were working too good. They were filtering out the antibiotic too quick.
Well, great job, kidneys.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, God. Appreciate it.
Way to be healthy.
Yeah. So they were like, we have another option. We can try you on a different antibiotic that doesn't necessarily filter through the kidneys as much. And at this point in time, the funny story on the kicker on this is I was actually on the dialysis unit of the hospital because they didn't have any open beds anywhere else at that time. So the thing about the kidneys was kind of funny because I was the only one on the unit that had good healthy kidneys. That they weren't used to. Yeah. So they started the new medicine. The numbers came down after the first dose of that and just started progressively coming down. Day 11 in the hospital, was it? I think. Or maybe it might have been 10. Those days run together, y'all, so I apologize. But it was day 10 or 11. I was like, okay, these numbers are so close. Like, we've got to be there. And amidst all this, all the tests that I had to have done between the MRIs, they also did an EKG where they had to put me to sleep and go down my throat to make sure that none of the bacteria infection got in the valves of my heart. Because that can happen where pieces of it get there and stick and grow. So I went through a lot of things I've never done before, and I'm not a fan of getting put to sleep. Like, I mean, really, who is? But, and not seeing my 5-year-old in the midst of those times, that was probably the most difficult thing, knowing that he was, which I love my family to death, and I thank God for them every day for taking care of him. And he's easy to go to other people, right? But him not having me at home, right? Yeah. And I didn't want him up there because I didn't want him to see me in that stage, because I didn't want him to get scared either. Right. At this point in time, he knows I'm at the doctor, but he doesn't know the severity of it because he's young and all that. But as long as he doesn't see it, he doesn't have to worry about it. Right. So, but like I said, day 10, about the doctor came in, and of course, I even called Chelsea and Dawn at one point in time, and they came up and prayed for me while I was there. And she just told me to keep resting in God's peace and just rest in him, lean into him and just rest. And I was doing devotionals every day while I was in there, had worship music on all the time, would fall asleep to worship music because I couldn't just sleep in the quiet. Like, it was just eerie. So let me back up a little bit before I go to day 10. So I will say this. From the time that I was in the waiting area and seeing the crucifixion and knowing what pain that Jesus went through, that's when I knew immediately everything was going to work out. yes, I still had some fear, but just not knowing what to expect.
Right.
But that was the peace that came over me that said, okay, he's got this. Whatever he wants is going to go through, and he's
Right.
going to walk me through this,
Yeah.
you know? But I knew I needed to call on others to help me. That's why God
Right.
gives us others.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to do it
Absolutely.
alone, you know?
Absolutely.
So I did have Chelsea and Don came one night and prayed with us. And, you know, she's like, you got this, you know, just keep resting in him. And one of the nurses, she pushed me like to another level of whenever I was getting up and taking a shower and stuff. She's like, God's got this. She's like, you got this. Just rely on him. And for her to say that, I'm like, she doesn't even know me.
Right.
She doesn't even know where I've been with my walk with God and stuff like that. But just to hear her say that, okay. And I remember there was one time the same nurse, I went to go get a CT scan done, which was like the third or fourth one that I had done at that point because they were making sure it wasn't growing.
Right.
I had a really bad experience the time before. Like they were throwing me over and just, it was so much pain. I was like, I need you to come down there with me because if I have to go down there and experience that again, I might end up hurting somebody as much as I can. Like
The good leg's going to kick somebody.
Right. Or, you know, might give them the good 1-2 or
Oh.
something. But she came down with me. And while we were sitting there waiting my turn to go back, I was like, do you mind praying for me? And she was like, absolutely. And I'm like, okay, like, what am I doing? Like, it was almost like word vomit. Like I couldn't even contain it. And she prayed for me, and it was another sense of peace that just, it's going to be all right. You know, and then fast forward to day 10. Of course, in the midst of this, I'm doing physical therapy, walking and stuff, and it's just progressively getting better. I have faith in that it's going to get better. Don't know how quickly or anything like that, but I never lost a sense of hope for sure. But day 10, the doctor comes in and says, you're good. Your numbers are down. You're below. We don't see an infection anymore. And my mom was there with me at the time because Chris was at work. And I remember as soon as the doctor left out, I just closed my eyes and I just lost it. And I remember seeing when I had my eyes closed, God's hands out and just saying, job well done.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? You know, and I had to question myself. I'm like, wait, what? And it was just a repeat, job well done, job well done. And just to see his hands, you know, and I'm like, okay, like this is it. This is where I've been missing out on, you know? And my mom was like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, she's like, I know but this is a different cry. It wasn't like, you know, it was an exciting cry, but she could see my demeanor. And she's like, what's going on? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, and I told her, and she was like, well, absolutely. She's like, that's God. That's his love. That's his favor on you, you know, and that's his grace. And so from there on out, I just gave everything to him.
Kind of reminds me of Job, you know, like Satan asked to sift him, and God's like, okay, whatever, you know, like he knew Job's heart.
Yeah.
And he knew that Job's intentions and Job's attention to the Lord. And almost in the end, even through all of it, like when the Lord rewards him back and restores back, it's almost that, hey, job well done. What that a boy, like I knew you could do it. I knew that you could withstand it. But what an honor. What a powerful thing to have that moment with the Lord. That
that was my true first like real encounter. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt it was him. You know?
So beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
The approval of the Lord is a beautiful thing, but when it goes beyond just the approval, when it goes to, you know, we all say us Christians when we get to heaven, we'll get the well done, good and faithful servant. Right. But to know that you got a good job here on the earth, like that's a whole nother level. Like, okay, God, maybe I'm doing something right here. Maybe I don't know how.
Yeah.
And it's been hell, but
yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm doing something right. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So go home from the hospital. They send me home with a PICC line, antibiotics for 4 weeks. But at this point, I'm still walking with a walker. School's getting ready to pick back up. I mean, we start in August.
Let me say this.
Yeah.
You come home on a walker and you come to church.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And
yeah.
one Sunday, and I don't know what was happening, but there
Yeah.
was a Sunday
Mhm.
that you were on your walker
Yes.
and you come to the
Front.
I happened to be singing on stage that Sunday,
Yeah.
I think.
Oh wait,
And-
no, y'all weren't there that day because remember I had to go back and ask you who the girl was.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're talking about the day that I walked around the church?
No. This is a different
before.
day.
Okay,
This is a different day.
Sorry.
But we will tell that.
Okay.
No, this day I was on stage
Mhm.
and we're worshiping, and it was a beautiful time of worship.
Okay.
And I remember opening my eyes and just I love to watch people worship. Like it's just beautiful to me. And I looked over in this corner and like I couldn't help but just be overwhelmed because you had made your way from the back to the front
Mhm.
on your walker and you were just worshiping. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, all that she's been through in the last 11 days,
Yeah.
12 days, however long, and she still has it somewhere within her to hobble with her walker and her
Right.
pick line
Yeah.
to the front to just worship. And you were like fully engaged and enveloped in worship.
Yeah.
You were just doing your own thing. And I thought, man, how easy it is to worship Jesus. Like we make it so hard sometimes,
Yeah.
but I'm like, it's so easy just to worship him right where we are, no matter where we are.
Yeah. No matter the circumstances.
And I think it was the
anything,
week before that you had actually come and like walked around or something. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Tell
Yeah.
us about that because I
So-
heard about it, but I wasn't there to
Right.
experience it.
So that day, I don't even remember what the altar call, if there was even really an altar call, or if it was just, no, it was just praise and worship. And so I'm there again, wobbled to the front with my walker. And they started praying in the midst of worship but something just came over me and I was like, let go of your walker. And I'm like, no, I can't let go of my walker. I'm not going to fall in front of these people. Like I can't, and
Do
so-
you know what I've been through the last
right.
week?
Like I'm not, no, this is my safety net right now. Like, so, but then I'm like, okay, no. And I had some other people standing next to me. And I'm like, okay, what if I fall? Like I'm starting to question myself. And then I'm like, no, So they had somebody, we did start praying in the midst of that. And I don't know if it was for healing or if it was for restoration. I don't remember exactly what was being prayed for at that point in time, but in the midst of me praise and worship, and somebody else had put their hand on me and I was comfortable with it. But then I started stepping back and forth without my walker. And I'm like, wait, I'm not touching the walker. So I'm like, okay, I took one step forward, one step back into my walker. And so it's still right there,
Right,
in case I need it. And then one of the youth members from Calvary came up to me. She was like, hey, the Lord just told me you just need to take a walk of faith. I'm like,
You're like, who
what?
are you?
Yeah, I don't even know you. You're young. Like, what do you,
Right.
do you know what I've been through?
Let me
Again,
tell you a few
yeah.
things.
She was like, I just see you worshiping, but God's telling you to take a walk of faith. And I'm like, okay. I said, you got to come with me though. I'm not doing this by myself. And she's like, no, absolutely. I'll come with you. And at that point in time, set the walker aside. And I hadn't at that point done anything. I hadn't walked without the walker, with a cane. Like I was truly 100% relying on that walker.
Right.
And she's like, take it. Like, he's with you, take it. And I was like, okay. So we did. We took a lap. We wound up during that praise and worship, that altar call, walked an entire lap around the church. And she was standing there right there. And Abigail.
I actually was there. We had come in
Okay,
late
did
that
you?
Sunday and we were sitting in the back, which, I don't do that.
it.
It's
Yeah,
just too
yeah.
distracting for me.
Yeah.
But we were in the back and in the middle row. Like there was no me getting out. or anything.
Okay. Gotcha.
And I saw you walk by and I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? And
yeah.
so I remember that, but I didn't know what was actually going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Abigail.
So it was so Abigail. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So this girl, like, okay, thank you, God, because had it not been for her being obedient,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have done that
Right.
by myself.
A teenager, and she's a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Like she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
hears the Lord.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, that day I was like, okay, even if I do have to use the walker here and there, God's got this.
Yeah.
Like he just gave me what I needed to walk around the entire church without anything. And then I think that was the morning actually that they called all the kids up to pray, but right before school started. And of course, when I got back to my seat, I was like, oh, I'm exhausted. Like, you know, but still being in that peace of God, like that was just, and then I'm like, okay, this is another point, came to church. And I don't want to say I was pointed out because I didn't, like, I didn't want all eyes on me.
Right.
But it was another time that God was calling me out at
the
church.
Lord just getting your attention.
Yeah. He's like, I can do things for you if you just rely on me.
Yeah. Pastor Cherie calls them God wink moments, like just little moments that we're just like, okay, he sees me. He's talking to me right now.
Yeah. So, you know, fast forward to like the first day of school when the teachers have to be there. I'm like, I'm not missing this. Like God's brought me this far. I can't. And of course, everybody else is like, you need to take care of yourself. Don't rush it. And I'm like, y'all just don't understand. Like, this is my drive to get better. This is where I'm called to be. Like, I can't just sit back. So that Monday morning when all the teachers were supposed to be back before the kids, that's when my home health nurse was coming to do the PICC line and stuff like that. So I couldn't make it, but I Zoomed in to see everybody and to hear the meetings and all that. And that afternoon was my first time stepping back on campus. I'm like, okay, this is it. You know, we've got this. God's got this. We're going to do this together. So I did show up to school with the kids. I was using a walker, which was a very humbling experience because that's not who I am either.
That's not how they know Coach Jessica either.
No. Right. So to see them and see me in that state, it was something that, you know, don't give up, you know, no matter where you're at, God's got this, you know? So, but yeah.
Awesome. And so I want to talk about a section. Is there anything else you want to talk about in that healing, that process or anything like that? Because I want to go in a little different direction, but tying into last night unless you want to say something else.
No, I did skip over though. Before I did get sick, I actually had our friend Chelsea baptize me and rededicate my life. So that was, I think ultimately that was the turning point. And because I got baptized when I was like 12, I skipped over that. So when I was younger, like 12, maybe 10 or 12, I did get baptized, but it was one of those things I did at youth camp. Not saying that I didn't mean it, but it didn't have
a lot
of
life change.
Yeah, life happened. Yeah. And so, I did do that in the midst of that. That was a changing point.
There was a moment at the end of last school year that you thought about no longer coaching, right?
Yes.
That was really real. Tell me about that. Because I want to lead into last night because I think there's some fun stuff that we could talk about there.
So at the end of the school year, I really thought there was like a change of heart for me. And I'm like, okay, God, like, why do I feel so distant from coaching? Like, are you calling me to do a different thing? Or, you know, I'm like, I feel like I really need to get some other people involved in basketball because I just don't see myself in it for the long run. And I guess maybe that was me kind of hoping to get out of it and not really understanding where my feelings were coming from. So I had reached out to actually a cousin of mine, but it's a distant cousin, but her daughter was actually coming up to the 5th grade and she used to play basketball. Well, her daughter plays basketball. I'm like, okay, let me reach out to her to see if she'd be willing to help me because if I can get some extra help, maybe that'll open some doors for me to move out of it. But I've poured so much into it at this point, I didn't want to just up and walk away. Yeah. Because, you know, you build a dynasty and you don't want to just see it crumble.
Right. Yeah.
You know? And that was my heart and my passion, but I just felt a little different. So I called up on Dana and she was like, absolutely, yeah. Well, actually, at first she was kind of hesitant. She's like, let me think about it. Let me talk to my husband. I was like, yeah, and pray about it. Pray about it. Because if it's not something that you see lined out, I'm okay with that. But yeah, let's both pray about it some more and we'll talk again. So she reached back out and she's like, yeah, I'll definitely help you. And at this point in time, I had one of my coworkers, Lauren, she was an assistant coach as well, but I knew she couldn't do it all on her own if I wind up getting out of it. So I was like, if I brought somebody else in, they could still tag team and help each other. Right. So yeah, I was I was pretty much done with it, but I hadn't had that door open to completely get out of it, so I couldn't just completely shut the door either. Yeah.
But I think it was cool in the middle of that too, that you're saying, God, I think I want to get out of this. The Lord's also calling you to start FCA at your school, which we talked about a few minutes ago. Like you're saying, God, I think I really want to do. I'm like finished with these kids, finished with this thing. And he's like, oh, by the way, why don't you start a Bible club at your school?
Yeah.
like he's not even listening to us.
No,
sometimes.
right. And I'm, like, I don't have enough on my plate.
Right.
You know?
And I remember you calling me. It was you talked about starting FCA and you're like, I'm going to talk to the principal. And then like 2 hours later, you're like, I talked to the principal.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we didn't waste any time.
No.
But that first meeting of your FCA, like God showed up at your school and was doing some stuff.
Yeah. And they have the National Day of Prayer, towards the end of the school year. We had the kids do chains, like a paper chain, and we wrapped it around the bulldog. And yeah, it was amazing. It was, that was some things like God showed up and really showed out too. And I was like, okay, all right. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to do this FCA thing. Like, you put me here.
So there, I want to, and I don't know the moment, but you messaged me a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago, and something had happened and you were like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. This is the kids I'm supposed to be with. Yeah. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. Okay. So, actually that was another Chelsea came to church, to Calvary with us. And I had really been questioning, okay, God, because things were shifting at work. There were some changes being made. And I'm just like, okay, are all these changes taking place because you wanting me to get out, or am I part of this change to make things better? And so I was really questioning that. And so our friend Chelsea, of course, I coached one of her daughters. I used to coach both of her daughters in basketball, but now only coach one of them. And they came to church with us that morning at Calvary. And so I go up to, the altar, it was during praise and worship. And I'm like, I go to the altar, but I kneel down and I'm just like, and this is I'm still hobbling a little bit. So for me to kneel down was a lot. But I didn't feel any pain or anything like that, because I even questioned myself. I'm like, if I go down here and kneel down,
can I get up?
Can I get up? Yeah. Like, what's that going to do? So I kind of got up though and sat back on one of the chairs off that they had on the side. And I just completely felt the presence of the Lord, just super heavy, just kind of being still. And I just rested in that for a minute. And I'm like, I just truly need a sign from you, God. Like, this is where you want me at the school. And when I opened my eyes, I had both of her daughters on either side of me. And I'm like, okay. And they were just bowing down in prayer, in his presence. And I could just sense the peace from them overflowing to me. And I'm like, okay, that's it.
That was a powerful morning. That was another morning I was on stage singing and they were there. We knew that they were coming to visit us. And I looked over and you were there, and one of the, I don't know if it was Amelia. I don't remember which
flags?
one. Yeah. I don't
Amelia,
know. Amelia had her flags, but they were like these huge, like angelic. I think they were gold. I don't remember for sure, but like she just had her head back, eyes closed, and she didn't care who else was in the room. It was just her and Jesus just worshiping.
Absolutely.
And then the other one was on the other side of you, and I saw you in the middle. And because we had this conversation of you being like, I don't know where it's supposed to be kind of thing, like it was just another beautiful moment of saying, wow, she's right there in the middle of it. Not knowing that that's what the Lord was speaking to you, but looking at it going, man, that's exactly where she needs to be. That's right where she needs to be in the middle of that.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
It was.
And so we've started the year and we're still coaching.
We're still coaching. Yes, we're still coaching. Still have FCA going, which I've actually, and that's another thing. It just, the word delegate has kind of come to me. I'm not a delegator. But that's another thing the Lord has shown me in the past year is it's okay to delegate. You don't have to do it all on your own.
Right.
But I have some people, my assistant coach, Lauren, she's helping out with FCA at the school. And then we have another para, Miss Christy, who's helping out. It's just been wonderful. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Started off the season coaching and just like, okay, God, like if you got to give me the strength and endurance to do this, because I'm not sure I can get through this, because I'm still like, I didn't even have time to prepare to be in my classroom, much less be a coach. Like if this is where you want me to be, you got to show me and you got to give me the strength and endurance. Those two words, strength and endurance, were what I repeated to myself and in my prayers from day one of starting.
Which you had just walked through during the summer.
Yeah,
You had walked through, I've got to strengthen, I've got to endure this.
absolutely.
And so you just bring it straight into your year.
Yeah, absolutely. So year starts off kind of rough with basketball. It's a slow start. I'm like, but that's not what it's about.
Right.
As long as we're growing and we're just truly being who we need to be, like that, it's a life lesson. It's not always about the win.
Right.
And for those girls to see me come out of where I was, because when we were practicing over the summer, I wasn't there.
Right.
I couldn't be.
He's in the hospital.
Yeah. And they didn't really know the severity of it until I showed up at practice one day in a walker, and they're like, oh, this is, they knew I was sick, but they didn't know to what extent.
Right.
I didn't really want to overwhelm them with that over the summer, So yeah. But God just kept telling me, give them grace. Give them grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, but they're not doing what I want them to do. Like, why are they not listening? But then it reverts back to my life as well. God, I didn't do everything God wanted me to do in my previous years. Yeah. And he's given me so much grace. And he's never left my side, even though I completely turn my back on him sometimes, So that's one of my things amongst this season with basketball. We might not have won every game, but as long as we don't turn our backs on what the end all be all is, it's, where we're going to finish.
Right. And how did we finish?
We finished as champions last night. Yes.
It's fresh. She's like coming still high off of the win yesterday. She came in this morning ready.
So we actually, the championship game, we won 35-32.
Wow.
And we beat the team that had not lost all season.
Come on now.
Yes.
You beat the Goliaths. I love it, little David.
We did.
So
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so that was my testament to the girls in the locker room is never give up. No matter where you start, it's always about where you finish.
Right.
And don't give up hope. Don't give up faith, and trust in the Lord and each other.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Man, what a story. And it's not over. We still got so much more. Yeah, it's just the beginning.
Absolutely.
So much more to go.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to wrap that up, I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and that God's favor, just be obedient.
Mm-hmm.
And God's favor will be upon you.
Absolutely.
No matter what.
Yeah. Right.
And you don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
You can make mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's all about learning from those and moving forward.
Right.
So.
And earlier I was talking about that picture of you. There's a picture of you. I don't know if you were running on the court after y'all won or what was going on.
Jumping up and down. Yeah.
And I'm like, this woman couldn't even walk during the summer. And there's a whole thing that we didn't even share about our ladies meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Where we had a prophet lady come in and she like called you out with some of the college girls and like, hey, take a lap around the room. And Jessica's like leading the charge. And I'm like, this lady has no idea.
I couldn't walk 2 weeks ago or a month ago.
2 months ago, this lady was not walking. And so just to see literally the walking miracle that you are, that God has done in your life. And knowing that it's just the beginning of even more. So I want to ask you a few quick fire questions that we ask everybody.
Yeah.
Favorite verse in the Bible? Or the one that you shared with me earlier? That one was good?
I'll share that one because that one, it truly, it hit me this morning. And should I give the background of with the numbers?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So this morning, when I was thinking about the end score and kind of replaying the night through my mind, the score was 35-32. And so the 35th book of the Bible is, you have to say it for me. Habakkuk. Okay. So I went to that book and I'm like, okay, well, how does 32 play into it? Well, there's 3 chapters in this book. And so in chapter 3, verse 2, it says, Lord, I have heard your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day. In our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. And so I just feel like, in the past 4 months, the wrath that I've had in my life and the mercy that God has given me in that.
Mm.
And I am in awe of his deeds that he's done.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
So cool.
Yes.
Absolutely in all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. When you get to heaven, who do you want to talk to besides Jesus?
Besides Jesus, probably Martha.
Okay. Rightly so. We've learned a
Yeah.
lot about Martha this
Yeah,
year.
I would say probably Martha or Mary.
Mhm.
It would.
I definitely want to talk to Martha because I think she gets the bad rap sometimes.
Yeah.
And she was doing what was customary, and she was doing what she knew
Mm-hmm.
and what she had been trained to do.
Right. Right.
And sometimes I think she gets the bad rap for that.
Yeah. And I feel like I can relate to her so
Mm-hmm.
much, you know. But if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have the story of Mary and Martha,
Right.
you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
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 All righty. If you could ask Jesus one thing, what do you think it would be?
Oh. Well, okay. I've never really thought about that question until I was in a prophetic ministry
Okay.
class,
Mhm.
and Miss Shannon said this question, and I'm like, oh, you know that. And so I don't want to say that I take that from her, but why did God make mosquitoes?
Why did God make mosquitoes?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, living in the South, I've just said something. But when she said it, I'm like, gosh, that is.
I want to know what the purpose of mosquitoes are. Love bugs.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need
Yeah,
them?
yeah,
Stink bugs. We don't need all
Right,
of those.
right.
Like, I'm not a big bug fan. Like, I'm not scared of bugs, but I'm like, they're kind of just pointless.
Yeah,
Like, what's the point
yeah.
of them? Especially South Louisiana mosquitoes are just
which I know, like the
relentless.
lizards eat the mosquitoes, so it's
But
like the food.
we can't find something else to eat.
Right. I mean, they can't eat grass.
I know, like,
Right.
find some leaves or something,
Something.
guys.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So
Okay, so let me ask you one last thing because we cannot end this episode
yeah.
without my boy JoJo. What is
Yes.
one thing that having the miracle that you didn't know that you would have has
Mhm.
taught you? What has Jordan taught you?
Oh gosh. Okay. So in a child's, it doesn't it talk in your have because I'm freshly new to the Bible and
Okay,
I'm freshly new to
gotcha.
this, but it talks about in the Bible out of a child's mouth.
Yes.
And so having him and just still going through this young stage, he just reminds me of the love that God has for us is the love that I have for him.
Yeah.
And I've got to remind myself that no matter what, God has that love for me just as I have it for him. So give
Mhm.
myself some grace,
Yeah.
you know, because God wants us to feel that love.
Hmm.
And if you ever become a parent, you know that love.
Right.
And it's something like no other.
Yeah.
But it's magnified when it comes to God and the love for us.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
the love that God has for us is magnified times 10 or 100 compared
Right.
to what we have for our kids.
Yeah.
And I think having Jordan has shown me that, you know, has opened those eyes to
Yeah.
see the true love that he has for us.
He does. And
Yeah.
man, it's so good just the way that God loves us. Just so innocently, right? Even
Yeah.
as kids innocently just love us and
Right.
take us as we are
Mhm.
and just love us no matter what, despite
Right.
like has a moment where he's like, I'm not pleased with you, but gosh, still loves me
Exactly.
none the same. So
Absolutely. Yep.
well, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you.
It was so
Thank
great. You did a
you.
great job.
Thank you.
You
It's
did
definitely
awesome.
not out of my comfort zone. So
And you never know. You did an awesome job. But I think we need more, the aspect that we didn't talk about it is I think we need more teachers like you that are willing to pray for their kids, willing to fight for them and willing to stand because it's hard out there. It's
well, it's just like
It's
you
not
saying
easy.
that there's so many things like this past 6 months and even the end of the school year last year, God has done so many things. Like, I mean, I have a notebook that I continue to write on, but you know, just I had a kid come up to me that was having anxiety right before LEAP testing. And I was like, would you want me to pray for you? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this, but
we gonna do it.
we did it anyway.
Right.
And she didn't have anxiety for LEAP testing.
Right.
You know, so it's just little things like that. I mean, just being obedient and
Yeah.
just knowing that where our help comes from, truly.
And he's put you there for such a time as this and in this moment. So
And sometimes I just don't understand, but I just got to be faithful.
that's right. I love it.
Yes,
We don't
thank you.
understand God, but we're going to be faithful.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I love that. And totally defines your story. God, I don't always understand, but faithful I
Yeah.
shall be.
Absolutely. And his favor is like no other.
No, none other.
Yeah.
Like no other for sure.
Mhm.
Well, thank you
Mhm.
so much for being here.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And thank you guys for watching. I pray that today you've been ministered to. I pray that maybe you're going through some kind of health issues, that you would remember that the Lord is there with you. And if Jesus endured, so can you. Put your faith, your trust in him.
Absolutely.
Keep your eyes on him. I love that you said that your mom would reposition. You always could see him. Like
Mhm.
position yourselves, if you're watching this, where you can see God in the middle of every situation.
Yep.
And that it would give you hope and strength. I thank you so much for being here. Again, thank you for subscribing to our channel. Thank you for liking our videos, for commenting them, sending your friends here. We're always welcoming anybody to the table to tell their story and to share the good news and the gospel. So until next time, I pray that your coffee is strong, that your heart is full, and that you position yourself to see Jesus in every situation. Until next episode, I'll see you later.